It's summer 1940 and Hitler is winning World War II.
Hitler's Nazis controlled nearly all of Europe.
Britain is the only power left fighting Nazi Germany.
An air raid warden tells us all.
It's her job to warn people about bombing raids.
She tells us all about bombings and poisonous gases.
And how people, even babies, got protected.
And bombs that are like butterflies.
Hitler fails to understand how deadly his butterfly weapon is.
Breaking news, 7-year-old boy plays with bomb.
Find out what happens here.
On Dad and Me Love History. Dad and me love a whole lot of history. We could be the greatest team that the world has ever seen. Dad and me love a whole lot of history.
So we visited Fort Nelson Museum in England, where experts shared the secrets of air attacks on Britain during World War II.
Yeah, so we weren't bomb disposal. We weren't allowed to dispose of bombs. We weren't trained. We left that to the bomb disposal squad from the army. But if anyone reported to us that any suspicious items, we cordon off an area. We do all the sort of policing bit and shouting at people and making sure people behaved.
Right, okay.
Let me grab this one, James. Right, are we...
Yeah, we're going. Yeah.
So I'm here with my friend James, and we're going to talk about butterfly bombs. So this little thing, it's about the size of a baked bean can. Looks like a baked bean can with a bit of wire sticking out the top of it. So James has got one. Now James is really special because that is an original butterfly bomb. That's actual butterfly bomb parts. So do you want to hold that up for everyone, James, so we can all see? There's people standing behind you. Lovely. So these are loaded into canisters in planes, anywhere between 6 and 120 of these per canister, and however many canisters a plane could hold. Now the reason you only had a random number in there was because when we found one of these, we didn't know how many we were looking for. The enemy were looking to cause maximum disruption with these, so we didn't know if we were looking for another 5 or another 500. So when these come out of the plane, they open up, the sides of the baked bean tin open up. As it comes down, it spins like a large, like the seeds off a sycamore tree. Once it's rotated 3 times, that has set the fuse and it's ready to go. Now some of these, when they landed, exploded. Some of them didn't do anything, they were duds. And some of them, when they landed, it set off a 30-minute timer. Sometimes a bit more than 30 minutes, sometimes a bit less. Half an hour was just enough time for people like me, air raid wardens, for the first aiders, for the fire service, police. Lots of people were killed with these, yeah. Because of the design, these little flaps, it would catch in trees, telegraph wires, guttering, the tops of houses, anything. It could, bridges, walls, anything. So getting rid of these was a nightmare. They were designed to cause maximum disruption. Sometimes the Home Guard used them for target practice. The reason you might not have heard of these is because we were really good during wartime at keeping our mouths shut. There was no Facebook, no Twitter, no instant messaging. We knew when to keep our mouths shut, and the government told us to keep our mouths shut about these. There was nothing in the newspaper, nothing on the radio. So the Germans, who were monitoring our communications all the time, looked and thought, well, they're not causing too much problem. We won't bother dropping them again. If they'd have carried on, it could have been a very different story. These were dropped in the Humber region, particularly in Hull. One night's butterfly bombing shut Hull town centre for 3 months because it takes that long to find them all and to detonate them all and make sure you've got an area sorted. Those ones I was talking about that were on a 30-minute timer also gave young people like my friend James here a bit of a problem. Young kids would go out looking for things to collect off bomb sites, bits of shrapnel, and finding a dud butterfly bomb, brilliant. So they pick it up, take it home to show Dad or Mum when they got home. Half an hour's just enough time to get it home and put it on the mantelpiece. So by the time Dad got home, there's no mantelpiece, no house, probably no neighbours. You still find these occasionally. If ever you do come across a butterfly bomb, please don't touch it, report it immediately. During the war, young people like my friend James here were told if you find a butterfly bomb, report it, don't go near it, don't touch it. These things are dangerous, they can go off at any time. I spoke to an old gentleman a little while ago. He was 6 or 7 during the middle of the war, lived on the outskirts of London. He'd had this drummed into him. You report butterfly bombs, they're dangerous, they're not something to muck about with, you don't touch them. Report, report, report. He got up one morning, went down the bottom of his garden to find one of these hanging in the tree. He did what any self-respecting 7-year-old would do in that situation. Didn't tell everyone, didn't tell anyone, sorry. Went and got all the local kids together, charged them a penny to come and have a look at the butterfly bomb. He said he went to bed that night so happy with his newfound fortune, he thought he was set for life, him and his butterfly bomb. Got up the next morning and he said someone had pinched it. He said, for me, that was the most upsetting bit of the war, when somebody stole my butterfly bomb. He thinks it was probably a dud because there were no reports of any of his mates' houses going up in flames, so very luckily for him, it was a dud, but he didn't make his fortune and he's still bitter to this day.
Oh.
So they are the butterfly bombs. Horrible things, but we got away with it. We were let off lightly because we kept our mouths shut. Had we made this big thing about how the butterfly bombs were shutting down our cities,
They would have chucked more over.
they would have chucked more over. A lot more over. So we kept our mouths shut, we did our bit, we all worked together. So everyone knows about air raid sirens. You've all heard those on films and such, and they meant that an air raid was coming. But there were different warnings for a gas attack. So you didn't listen for the air raid siren. What you would hear in the event of a gas attack would be a gas rattle. Now I've got my young assistant here. He's going to help me with the gas rattle. You ready? So they're really noisy, and that was the point of them. You heard the gas rattle, you knew to put your gas mask on. Now, the way you knew it was time to take your gas mask off, that it was all safe, obviously it couldn't be the gas rattle again, because you'd never know if that meant put it on, take it off, if you'd miss one. So to make sure people knew the difference, there were gas bells. My young assistant is going to help me ring the gas bell. Now we've told everyone to put theirs on, take them off. So there you go, nice and noisy so that everyone can hear.
So that's the all clear. Gas masks off and we're all safe now. Okay.
So everyone would have had a gas mask, from newborn babies to the oldest person that was about. Newborn babies had a big one that they were put into and you had to hand pump. Kids would have had one that was bright red, had a little flap that made a funny noise when you breathed out, and that was to try and make it as fun as you could with things like that. To make sure that kids knew about taking them on and off and didn't think it was anything special, every week at school they'd have put it on for an hour and done a maths lesson. So if you could cope with maths with your gas mask on, you could cope with anything. As I say, the idea of that was that it just became routine to put it on and do things in it, so they weren't scared about wearing them.
How would you feel about that, James, wearing a gas mask when you're doing your numbers at school?
Weird.
I bet it felt weird to them at first, but I guess if they did it every time they did numbers at school, then after a while it wouldn't feel so weird. So if they had to wear it for real, they'd be able to do it and it wouldn't be too bad for them.
I wouldn't fancy playing football in them, but doing maths was probably a bit easier.
Maybe you can describe for our listeners what we're looking at here.
We're looking at a baby with a gas mask.
And it covers like most of her body as well. And what's this bit on the side of the gas mask?
It's the pump to pump the air out and in.
And from what you learned earlier, how often do you have to do that pumping? Do you just do it one time every 10 minutes or
Every day.
all the time she's wearing it, every few seconds, right?
Yeah, constantly have to keep pumping because baby constantly needs fresh air because their little lungs can't pull air through the filters. That's why they're in this and not in a little face one.
So all through, if that was like an air raid at night, you'd be doing that all night long.
Yeah, 4 or 5 hours in the event of a gas attack sometimes till you got the all clear. Luckily we never had gas attacks over here, but you had to be ready and there were practice runs and you had to know you could do it. And sometimes there were gas warnings, but there weren't gas attacks. We were never really sure.
Yeah.
So sometimes we erred on the side of caution and sounded the alarm anyway.
And that'll be your job as an air raid warden.
Yeah, my job's an air raid warden. I'd run up and down the streets with my gas rattle, shouting gas, gas, helping people, checking they were all right, seeing what we could do to support people during air raids.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
All right. Please do. We're not a museum. We're all about education. Here, have a go on that thing. Yeah, we'll do.
Let's see if you understood all that. Here are a couple of questions for you. If there was an air raid, there was always a worry that the enemy might drop bombs with poisonous gas in them. How do people know when to put their gas masks on?
With a loud rattle?
That's right. The air raid wardens would make their rattles go crazy noisy and people would know to put their masks on. But how did people know when to take their masks off?
They would ring a bell?
That's right, you remembered. Well done, James.
And why did they need butterflies' wings on the bombs?
Yeah, that's a good question. They weren't like normal bombs, which have got like a sharp point on the front, so they come down as fast as possible and crash through buildings. These bombs were designed so they would kind of float down with wings, and then they would get caught in trees and in bushes at tempting heights for children and some adults to go and investigate them and maybe have a play with them, and of course that's when the bombs would go off. They had what's called delayed fuses of different lengths of time. Some of those butterfly bombs would go off in a few seconds after they land, but some would go 5 minutes, some 10 minutes, some half an hour, some an hour. So it was really confusing. You wouldn't know until you got too close that it was actually a bomb. Find us on
Facebook
and Instagram
and Twitter. Please leave us a review on iTunes, but only if you like us, and tell your friends about us.
Yes, we'll only be able to continue making podcasts if we get listeners, so we need your reviews on iTunes and everywhere else, please. Bye for now.
Bye-bye. Bye. Dad and me love a whole lot of history. We could be the greatest team that the world has ever seen. Dad and me love a whole lot of history.
Cool. Well done, James.
Hello.
Find out what happens here. Find out what happens here. Find out what happens here.
Hello.